Australia competed with a very, very similar kind of approach, and careers has been adapted for Thailand, so that tends to work well. There's been quite a lot of work done in Egypt that Dan Kaminsky did all that work. So they've done a reasonably rapid report right across the country and then some more detailed studies in the World Heritage Area. So I think finding somebody who's done that and then workshopping it through with your staff, because if the staff don't have some sense of ownership, they'll be likely to be resistant. But unless Jeff or Beatrice have got any comments on what you did in North Africa.
My name is Ratna. I come from Thailand, and we're doing the MPE for the Thailand MPA, and we quite confused that because but the tool is quite complicated, but we're not confused with that tool. But we confused about that how many tools, like many people in here said, and I'm not sure that do you have like criteria of the tools, like you said that there are 45 assessment tools, right? But do you have a pro and con or the criteria or how to use, for example, like for Thailand, we would like to pick one to suit with territorial and marine, and which one is the best, or how to suit with for our consideration that which one is suit for us. Because each country has different contract. Anyone? I don't know who can answer
We have to stop talking. There is a report that Fiona's the lead author on and it's available on the IUCN website and also on the World Conservation Monitoring Centre website, that provides details and strengths and weaknesses of all of the different systems that we reviewed up till 2010. We didn't in that make any commentary. I guess we tried to identify strengths and weaknesses, but not to be too prescriptive about what tools to use, because there are many factors that go into making that decision. But that will give you some idea of the breadth. I don't think there's a single clear answer to that. I think it really is a question of saying where and how do we want to use this, what sort of capacity do we have, what's our capacity to integrate it into management systems. I think maybe I might throw it to Tony, because in New South Wales and Victoria they've done a really excellent job of integrating their assessment tools into the way in which they manage the park. So if you really wanted to inform management on an ongoing basis, then I think this issue of how do you build it into the way in which you do business is important, and you can look at the sorts of models that they develop. Quite similar to, very similar basis to what's been done already for the marine reserves in Thailand, but that linkage I think is important. Tony, if you want to comment.
Yeah, I think it's hard work, and I think probably a lot of the effectiveness evaluations started out as being a little bit separate, at least in perception of the managers, that it was something that it was a thing that they had to do. Whereas what we're trying to do is just make evaluation not too scary, because I think when we started out, there were a number of people that felt, yes, does this mean, if I'm honest about my evaluation, does this mean that I'm going to get more resources or less resources, and all those sorts of questions. We've been trying to say, well, the game's changed a bit. What we need to do is we actually need to be as honest as possible, and we need to feed that into our action planning. So we've got some short-term plans. So you essentially can go through your results and say, well, what is a critical issue that's emerged that we need to act on in the next 12 months to 2 years or so? But there's a whole range of things that you can then say, well, how can we feed some of these emerging issues into our 5-year planning? And you can do that both at a whole of parks network scale. We just had a workshop a couple of weeks ago with our Parks Victoria board, and they're saying, well, we need to use these results to feed it into our next 3-year plan for the whole organisation. At the other level, increasingly some of our local park staff are saying, this is actually, rather than it being a burden, which is a lot of people have thought about that in the past, rather than it being a burden, it's actually going to help them, because there is nothing better than having some level of objectivity and transparency when people have to make hard decisions. And yes, while the evidence base is not perfect all the time, at least there is a systematic process that is a relatively transparent process, that when managers are making decisions about where they take resources away or put resources into, there is at least a level of consistency that they can make some judgments on. So it is that use of the information, rather than being reporting, it's the use of the information to feed it into your action planning program and your corporate planning program that we think is probably going to be the most valuable. And apart from that, providing some information back to the government to say, well, for the several $100 million you're putting in each year, this is what you get back. I think that's a kind of a completely separate issue.
Just to add to that, what really, I think that for your question, the first thing is to use any of the two, the most common, the most simple one. As they are all built on the same framework, it's not very difficult to choose, but choose just one, which is simply start with the state, and then you adapt, as you said. That's exactly what we did through all those years. We started with the RAPAR and so the most common tools, but we have changed them full time. Of course, keeping the framework as it is, the methodological thing, the philosophy of the assessment. But we have done this work, and during the small workshop we'll have later, we just present what we have done with the RAPAR, which is one of the main tools, going from the RAPAR as it is to what we use now, because we tried to address some of the issues that I presented about the reliability of data and so on. And we have done, today I would say that the RAPAR we implement has almost nothing to do with what it was at the beginning, but it's still the same tool. We just changed the order of the question, the way we ask them, the way we go to find some more information and so on. So it's much more difficult than at the beginning, but it's still the same. But we have been building that full time. It's really a learning process. It's a learning process for the administration, the park department, the state, the region, and mostly for yourself. You can't expect to start the first day of your study and finish with the same tool after 2 years. If you do that, I mean, it's sure that you have lost something. Sure.
All right, our session, what we might do is have a short stretch and a short break and a glass of water. What we're going to do after this is break up into some small groups, and the intention of this is to be able to get down into the next level of detail. And so there'll be an opportunity to showcase some examples and the opportunity to then talk about application of those sorts of examples to your situation. What we're proposing is having, I think, 5 or 6 tables, and looking at we didn't talk about it so far this morning, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Outlook Report, which is a major exercise. If we can have a table on that, and John will be down in the bottom corner to talk about that process. We'll have one on the meta-analysis, and Lauren, are you going to sit here? Lauren's down here to talk about, I guess, if you're interested in how do you use results, how do you analyse them, how do you tell the story, Lauren will be useful to talk to here. I'll be down in this table in the front here to talk about some of our online tools, both in information entry and reporting. I think we're going to have a table on application in Africa that Jeff is going to coordinate, and I think application in Colombia, Sandra, looking at Can you just take that one? Okay, Columbia's over here. So we've got I think we've got 5 laptops that we can just, if people have got any illustrative material, they can put it on those laptops. It's not intended to be a lecture, but it is meant to be as interactive as possible. So we have a little break, and then that will allow us to organise this one.
So I think, Tony, too, the intention is that people will be able to shift, so that after a period of time.
That's right. Yeah, so we've got roughly an hour, which means that over that period of an hour, you should be able to get around to, hopefully most of those tables if you're interested, circulate as much as you like.
We do 10, 15 minutes or something?
Yeah, 10 or 15 minutes for each one of you. Sorry, if we could make it relatively short, because we are running a bit behind time, if we could make it no longer than 10 minutes.